Hello, Vacation Station kids. I'm going to read you a story from me, Miss T, from the city of Reno to your home. It's almost Easter, guys, so Peter Rabbit is the choice that I made for you guys. This tale is called The Flopsy Bunnies. It is said that the effect of eating too much lettuce is terrific. I have never felt sleepy after eating lettuces, but then I am not a rabbit. They certainly had a very terrific effect upon the Flopsy Bunnies. When Benjamin Bunny grew up, he married his cousin Flopsy. They had a large family, and they were very improvident and cheerful. I do not remember the separate names of their children. They were generally called the Flopsy Bunnies. As there was not always quite enough to eat, Benjamin used to borrow cabbages from Flopsy's brother. Guess who, kids? Peter Rabbit, who kept a nursery garden. Sometimes Peter Rabbit had no cabbages to spare. When this happened, the Flopsy Bunnies went across the field to a rubbish heap to the ditch outside Mr. McGregor's garden. Mr. McGregor's rubbish heap was a mixture. There were jam pots and paper bags and mountains of chopped grass from the mowing machine, which always tasted oily. Ew. And some rotten vegetable marrows and an old boot or two. One day, oh joy! There was a quantity of overgrown lettuces, which had shot to flower. That means they bloomed, kids. They bloomed. Those were some very happy bunnies. The Flopsy Bunnies simply stuffed lettuces. By degrees, one after another, they were overcome with slumber. That means they fell asleep because they ate so much. You know what I mean? And lay down in the mown grass. Benjamin was not so much overcome as his children. Before going to sleep, he was sufficiently wide awake to put a paper bag over his head to keep off the flies. The little Flopsy Bunny slept delightfully in the warm sun. From the lawn beyond the garden came the distant clattering sound of the mowing machine. The blue bottles buzzed above the wall, and a little old mouse picked over the rubbish among the jam pots. I can tell you her name. She was called Thomasina Tittlemouse, a wood mouse with a long tail. She rustled across the paper bag and awakened Benjamin Bunny. The mouse apologized profusely and said that she knew Peter Rabbit. While she and Benjamin were talking, close under the wall, they heard a heavy tread above their heads, and suddenly, Mr. McGregor emptied out a sack full of lawn mowings right upon the top of the sleeping Flopsy Bunnies. Benjamin shrank down under his paper bag, and the mouse hid in a jam pot. The little rabbits smiled sweetly in their sleep under the shower of grass. They did not awake because the lettuces had been so terrific. Or is it soporific? They dreamt that their mother, Flopsy, was tucking them up in a hay bed. Mr. McGregor looked down after emptying his sack, and he saw some funny little brown tips of ears sticking up through the lawn mowings. He stared at them for some time. Presently, a fly settled on one of them, and it moved. Mr. McGregor climbed down on the rubbish heap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little rabbits, said he as he dropped them into his sack. Oh no! The Flopsy Bunnies dreamt that their mothers were turning them over in their beds. They stirred a little in their sleep, but they still did not wake up. Mr. McGregor tied up the sack and left it on the wall. He went to put away the mowing machine. While he was gone, Miss Flopsy Bunny, who had remained at home, came across the field. She looked suspicious at the sack and wondered where everybody was. Then the mouse came out of her jam pot, and Benjamin took the paper bag off his head, and they told the doleful tale. Benjamin and Flopsy were in despair. They could not undo the string, but Miss Tittlemouse was a resourceful person. She nibbled a hole in the bottom corner of the sack, and the little rabbits were pulled out, and a pinch made them come awake. Their parents stuffed the empty sack with 3 rotten vegetable marrows and an old blacking brush and 2 decaying turnips. Then they hid underneath a bush and watched for Mr. McGregor. Mr. McGregor came back and picked up the sack. and carried it off. He carried it hanging low as if it was rather heavy, and the Flopsy bunnies followed at a safe distance. They watched him go into his house, and then they crept up to the window to listen. Mr. McGregor threw down his sack on the stone floor in the way that would have been very painful to the Flopsy bunnies had they been inside of it. They could hear him dragging his chair on the flags and chuckle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little bunnies, said Mr. Gregor. What's that? What have you been spoiling now? Inquired Miss McGregor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little fat bunnies, repeated Mr. Gregor, counting on his fingers. 1, 2, 3. Don't be silly. What do you mean, you silly old man? In the sack. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, replied Mr. Gregor. The youngest bunny, Floppy Bunny, got upon the windowsill, and Miss McGregor took hold of the sack and felt it. She said she could feel 6, but they must have been old rabbits because they were so hard and all different shapes, not fit to eat. But the skins will do fine to line my old coat. Line your old coat? Shouted Mr. Gregor. I shall sell them and buy myself Bassy. Rabbit tobacco? I shall skin them and cut their heads. Miss McGregor untied the sack and put her hand aside. But when she felt the vegetable, she became very angry. And she said that Mr. McGregor had done it on purpose. And Mr. McGregor was very angry too. And one of the rotten marrows came flying out and hit the Flopsy bunny. He rather hurt. Excuse me. Then Benjamin and Flopsy thought it was a good time to go home. They never got their tobacco or their rabbit skins. And Thomasina Tittlemouse got a present of enough rabbit wool to make herself a cloak and a hood and a handsome muff and a pair of warm mittens. The end. This was made, well, the author is Beatrix Potter. She makes all the Peter Rabbit books. I'm so glad that I got to read to you guys. Again, you know who I am, Miss T from Vacation Station, and I'm glad that you let me in your homes to talk and to read this cool story just in time for Easter. Get ready, because I'm going to read some more to you another time. Bye for now.